They were playing Leaf Freak by Chic when I got the text. I remember that because the bass rolled through the floor of the VIP lounge, low and physical, vibrating straight up my legs and making the champagne in my hand tremble against the rim of the glass. The room was drenched in light and movement. Models with impossible proportions glided past in razor-sharp silhouettes, cheekbones catching the glow like cut glass. Applause broke out in waves after every look. Everyone around me clapped on cue, smiling, leaning forward, eager to be seen, enjoying the moment. Everyone except me. I sat perfectly still, eyes locked on the message glowing on my phone. The words so casual they felt cruel, like they were mocking me. "We're going younger, nothing personal. Brant." 6 words, no greeting, no context, no conversation, just a period at the end, like a door being shut. 12 years reduced to a text message delivered during the biggest night of Paris Fashion Week. I blinked hard, once, then again, as if the letters might shift into something else if I stared long enough, something that didn't mean what I knew they meant, something that didn't say I had just been fired while the world applauded around me. My name is Dana Lell. I'm 44 years old, and until 5 minutes ago I was the head of global branding at Alar Mode, one of the most powerful fashion houses on the planet. I helped shape it from a respected label into a cultural force. I sacrificed weekends, holidays, relationships, and half my spine leaning over desks and mood boards to build the image now strutting confidently down that runway. I knew every thread of its story, and now Brant Holloway, the CEO with the engineered smile and the aesthetic instincts of a spreadsheet, had decided I no longer fit the image. Too old, not the right energy, not the right vibe. My heartbeat thudded in my ears, louder than the music, louder than the applause. I stayed seated, legs crossed, shoulders relaxed, face composed. Inside, something splintered. Champagne glasses clinked nearby. Laughter floated from a nearby banquette. A woman in a Saint Laurent jumpsuit leaned toward her date and whispered something that made them both throw their heads back laughing, carefree, untouchable. I couldn't stand up. Not yet. Leaving now would draw attention. It would confirm what I was starting to understand had been circulating in hushed corners for weeks. Nothing personal, Brant had written, but it always is. Across from me, a fashion editor from Milan leaned closer and smiled warmly. "You always look so unbothered, Dana," she murmured. "I admire that." I smiled back, gracious, distant. I had no idea who she was, but I nodded like I did, like this was just another night, another show, like I hadn't just been discarded like last season's accessory. My phone buzzed again, another message. This one from a junior PR associate. "I'm so sorry to hear. You were such a force." Past tense, already written out of the present, as if I'd been buried before the lights even dimmed. My fingers tightened around the arm of the chair, nails pressing into the velvet. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Not Brant, not the interns already imagining my office as theirs. I stayed exactly where I was. I sat like I belonged, because I did. No message could erase that. Then someone shifted beside me, not loudly, not aggressively, just a subtle change in space. A man's sleeve brushed my arm as he reached for his glass. Water, not champagne. That alone set him apart in a room soaked in alcohol and ego. I glanced sideways. He met my eyes briefly, nodded once, observant, reserved, and said nothing. I turned back toward the runway, letting a faint smile rest on my lips as the lights dimmed for the finale. If they thought I was going to unravel in public, they'd misunderstood me for 12 years. Alara may have cut me loose, but I wasn't finished, not even close. He waited until the applause faded, until the models completed their final walk and the lighting shifted from theatrical to practical. Only then did he lean slightly toward me, his voice low enough to stay between us. "You handled that text well," he said. "Most people would have made a scene or collapsed." I turned to him fully for the first time. He was tall, late 50s maybe, silver threaded through his hair in a way that looked earned, not engineered. His suit was charcoal gray, tailored with quiet precision, no loud logos, no desperate statements. Understated confidence, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. "Were you reading over my shoulder?" I asked calmly. "I didn't need to," he replied, almost smiling. "People talk, especially when they're uncomfortable." There was no need to ask his name. Marcel Renaud, CEO of LaRue, Alar's oldest and most persistent rival, the one man Brant Holloway had never been able to outmaneuver. We'd crossed paths twice before at events like this, nothing more than polite acknowledgments. But Marcel was known for remembering things, people, moments, details others overlooked. "Then congratulations are in order," I said, lifting my glass for a slow sip. "You'll have the press buzzing once they catch wind of Brant's latest decision." Marcel studied me for a moment. He was careless, he said finally, but not creative. Men like him always think youth is a shortcut to relevance. I let out a quiet snort. Youth with a master's degree in TikTok, that's the new requirement. That earned the smallest curve of a smile. "And yet," he said, "they always call the adults when the structure starts to fail." His words were measured, intentional. He wasn't comforting me, he was evaluating the situation and me. "So," I said, straightening slightly, "is this reconnaissance?" He swirled his water, deliberate, controlled. "I wouldn't insult you with an offer during your own funeral, but we should talk privately soon. And if business isn't your priority, then perhaps," he added, meeting my eyes, "we simply talk about what comes next." I hesitated, not because I lacked confidence, but because the clarity of his timing unsettled me. "I have time this weekend," I said. "Saturday, 11, my office," he replied, like it was already written into his calendar. He stood, buttoning his jacket. "You were the soul of Alar's image," he added quietly. "Some of us noticed." He left before I could respond, and in his absence, something shifted inside me. Not relief, not anger, something sharper. Possibility. It was raining the day I returned to Alara's headquarters. Not dramatically, just a persistent drizzle coating the glass exterior of a building I'd helped rebrand 5 years earlier. "Luxury meets modernity," I'd written in the deck. Now it just looked anonymous, a place I no longer belonged. The security guard smiled sadly when I walked in. "Good morning, Miss Lell," he said automatically, then paused. Sorry, best of luck." I nodded and kept moving. My office was already hollow. Campaign photos boxed away, the corkboard of fabric swatches gone. Even the energy felt removed, like someone had aired it out. 3 boxes waited for me, neatly labeled, no note, no acknowledgement. People slowed as they passed my door. Some glanced in quickly, others avoided looking at all. I heard whispers. She didn't know, total blindside, orders from Brant. No one stopped. HR was clinical, all smiles and rehearsed language. "We're framing this as a mutual decision," she said. "We're not," I replied. "That's how it will be presented publicly. Dana Lell has chosen to step away to pursue creative endeavors." I laughed quietly. "Tell Brant to try harder next time." After signing the last form, I stood, box in hand. "Don't worry," I said. "You're not that interesting." That night, I met Marcel Renaud in the private salon behind LaRue's flagship atelier. Dark wood, minimalist table, no distractions. He poured coffee instead of wine. "This is strategic," he said plainly. "Your exit weakens Aura." I appreciate the honesty. But I want more than disruption. I want reinvention. LaRue is expanding into North America. I need an identity that doesn't chase Allah, one that stands beyond them. "And you want me to build it?" "From nothing. Full authority. Creative, team, messaging, and equity. 10%, a board seat." "Why me?" "Because you made fashion aspirational again," he said, "and they were too short-sighted to see it." By the end of my first week at LaRue, I had already made 10 phone calls that reshaped the landscape. I reached out quietly to the people who mattered: stylists, buyers, veterans who remembered when fashion was about craft, not algorithms. By Friday, I stood in the showroom, fabric and sketches surrounding me. Marcel watched as I dismantled everything and rebuilt it from scratch. "You seem different," he said. "Focused, but not angry." I considered that. "Because I don't want to destroy them," I said. "I want to build something better." He smiled faintly. "That's why I chose you." By the end of the week, I had assembled the beginnings of my new team, a mix of young creatives and seasoned pros who'd been pushed out of other brands for having too much taste, too much opinion. I gave them room. I told them we weren't copying anyone and that our goal wasn't to beat, it was to outlast them. For the first time in years, I wasn't performing for someone else's approval. I was creating, and it felt like breathing again. The strike had begun, quiet, precise, and entirely mine. It started with a whisper, a former client pulling out of a spring campaign, then another dropping off the sponsorship roster for the Capri event, and then a call from a fashion journalist I knew well. "Off the record," she said. "Is it true you were pushed out?" I paused. "What are they saying?" "That it was mutual. But off the record, no one believes that, especially not with how fast you've landed at LaRue." I didn't confirm or deny. I just let her sit with the silence. Sometimes silence is louder than a statement. By midweek, Brandt's office was in full damage control. I knew because one of my old assistants, now miraculously promoted, sent me a message. "FYI, Brandt's making calls trying to get ahead of the narrative. Told someone you were unstable, said you ghosted the board." Unstable? Of course, the oldest trick in the book. Discredit the woman, protect the empire. That night, I got dinner with Tess Young, one of the few people at Aura I still trusted. "He's scared," she said between bites of grilled sea bass. "3 board members have started asking questions, and a partner brand from Milan wants out. They don't trust him anymore." "What's he saying about me internally?" Tess gave me a tight look. "He's spinning a story. Says you were burning out, impulsive, that you isolated yourself." I laughed. Classic Brandt. Erase the facts, reframe the fiction. He's also hinting you sabotaged relationships, claims you told a LaRue client to back out of an Aura deal. That got my attention. "He's laying groundwork," I said. "The wheel's already turning." Marcel called later that evening. His tone was steady, but I heard the edge. "We've received a cease and desist from Aura," he said, "accusing you and us of corporate interference, client poaching, reputation damage." "Let me guess," I said. "They're basing this on air and ego." Marcel exhaled slowly. "They've sent evidence, emails, timelines, none of which add up." "Good," I said, "because I kept everything. All my emails, meeting notes, the day I was cut out of the new European partnership deck, the last-minute board materials I wasn't given access to, even a calendar invite Brandt scheduled titled Strategy Refresh that turned out to be the meeting where he plotted my exit, conveniently held when I was at a speaking event. I spent 2 days compiling it all. Dates, gaps, clear documentation that I had been excluded, not absent, that I was being erased, not negligent. My lawyer reviewed everything. "This isn't just defensive," she said. "This is strong enough to counterclaim if we go public." "Not yet," I said. "I don't want war. I want clarity." Marcel and I met again that Friday. I handed him the file. "I want to be ready," I told him, "if he escalates." "He will," Marcel said, "because men like him don't believe they can lose until it's too late." We sat in silence for a moment. Then Marcel looked at me calmly. "If you want to go public, I'll back you." I nodded. "Let's wait. But if he says one more word, if he so much as whispers my name in the wrong room, we launch." It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about protecting what I was building, because I wasn't just a threat to Brandt. He was his consequence. The blog post dropped on a Monday. It wasn't just any blog, it was Mode Shift, the kind of industry site insiders checked religiously. Their lead story, "The Fall of Allah's Star, What Really Happened to Dana Lell," They didn't use my quotes. They didn't have to. The piece was built on leaked internal emails, timeline inconsistencies, and anonymous sources from inside, most of whom I hadn't even contacted. The narrative was clear. I hadn't left, I'd been pushed. And not because I failed, because I threatened Brandt. By noon, #Dana was trending on fashion Twitter. Editors I hadn't heard from in months suddenly popped up in my inbox with lines like, "Just read the piece, you deserve better." Influencers reposted clips of my old interviews, calling me a visionary. A few went further, dragging Brandt for choosing youth over backbone. The next day, Alara released a statement calling the article misinformed and sensationalist. That backfired fast. Within hours, a second wave of leaks hit, meeting transcripts, audio snippets, and one damning memo where Brandt referred to me as a legacy branding risk. Legacy, as if experience was a liability. Marcel and I watched the storm quietly. He was calmer than I expected, maybe even satisfied. "I told you," he said, sipping his espresso. "Men like Brandt overplay their hand." We agreed to strike while the conversation was still fresh. I scheduled a strategy session with LaRue's global board, flew to New York, and laid everything out. A 12-month rollout, new product lines, celebrity partnerships, a mobile atelier concept for U.S. cities, a digital-first branding suite with identity-driven campaigns. No more hollow slogans, just substance, style, and soul. I ended the presentation with a single slide. We don't copy Allura, we replace them. The boardroom was dead silent. Then one of the directors, an old Parisian with sharp glasses and sharper instincts, smiled. "Let's begin." Within the week, whispers turned into motion. A luxury retailer in Manhattan announced they were discontinuing their AR showcase, citing a desire to align with brands that reflect modern values. 2 legacy clients from my Alluras quietly reached out, asking to meet with LaRue's team. I didn't gloat, I worked. My inbox filled with NDA requests, my calendar booked out 3 weeks in advance. My phone buzzed with messages like, "Saw the new concept mock-ups, breathtaking," and "Free fall, congrats." But the one that stood out, a text from Tess. "Brandt's melting down. The board is asking for explanations. Some people are calling you a genius. I'm calling you free." And for once, that's exactly how I felt. Brandt's rebuttals only made things worse. His emails clarifying the situation contradicted previous timelines. A junior staffer anonymously leaked proof he had backdated several documents. By the end of the week, the shift was unmistakable. People weren't just curious about LaRue anymore, they were rooting for us, and for me. The LaRue relaunch gala was held at the Met Cloisters in New York. Marble archways, live strings playing in the garden, and candlelight dancing off tapestries that hadn't seen reinvention in centuries. The guest list curated to perfection, not for prestige, but for influence. I walked in wearing a structured silk suit from one of our new designers, a 27-year-old genius from Detroit who'd never stepped foot in Paris. People turned, not because I was famous, but because I was different now, calm, commanding, seen. The first person to greet me was Camille Sayo, editor-in-chief of Fashion West. She took my hands in both of hers and whispered, "You did it. Everyone's watching." I didn't need to ask what she meant. I could see it in the faces around the room. Designers who used to ignore me at Allura events, PR heads who used to defer to Brandt. Tonight, they came to me. Midway through the evening, Marcel stood on a small platform at the edge of the terrace. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I don't believe in long speeches," he said, "but I believe in vision, and tonight I want to formally announce the new creative direction of LaRue, led globally by Dana Lillell." The applause didn't erupt. It built like a wave, starting slow and rising until the courtyard echoed with it. I felt myself smile, not out of vanity, but because this time I wasn't the silent architect behind someone else's empire. I was the lead. After the speech, I made my rounds. Old colleagues, former clients, new allies. One by one, they offered to meet, to collaborate, to shift budgets. Allura's fall wasn't a rumor anymore. It was a strategy. And then, as the party wound down, my phone buzzed, a number I hadn't seen in months. Brant. I didn't answer. He followed with a text. Brant, can we talk privately? No lawyers, just us. I stood at the edge of the terrace, phone in hand, the Hudson dark and endless below. Later that night, an email arrived. A formal settlement offer from Brant's legal team. Confidentiality, non-disparagement, a sum of money, a plea to end this quietly. I forwarded it to Marcel and my attorney with a single line. Respectfully declined. The next morning, I posted a photo from the gala on my personal account, the first I'd uploaded in almost a year. I was standing between two of our new designers, both beaming. The caption read, "We're just getting started," because I didn't want Brant's money. I wanted legacy, and that he couldn't buy back. It happened faster than anyone expected. Just 3 weeks after the gala, the European brand Brant had been courting, Aran Atelier, publicly pulled out of the merger. Their statement was surgical. After reassessing risk factors and reputational concerns, we've decided to redirect our expansion strategy. That was corporate speak for, we're not tying ourselves to a sinking ship. And Allura was sinking fast. The exposés hadn't stopped. In fact, they'd gotten sharper. One featured a leaked voice memo of Brant mocking his own staff, calling them style-challenged note-takers, and bragging about how he'd outplayed Dana Lillell like a chess move. Another revealed discrepancies in their quarterly brand reports, fake numbers padded to attract investors. Then came the internal revolt. A whistleblower, anonymous but meticulous, leaked a folder of communications to Mode Shift, dozens of emails showing how Brant manipulated internal data and backdated staff performance reviews. One document in particular stood out, a timeline showing how I was deliberately cut from decision-making months before I was fired. It included the email he sent the day after Paris Fashion Week, titled "New Direction, Dana No Longer Needed." It was all there, time-stamped, unedited. I didn't leak it, I didn't have to. The truth had legs now, and no leash. I watched it all unfold from the glass conference room in LaRue's new Manhattan studio. Behind me, young designers were pinning swatches to walls and laughing about TikTok trends. Our spring campaign was in full swing, and for the first time, the buzz wasn't about Brant or Allura, it was about us. Marcel came in holding a printout. Thought you'd want to see this. The headline read, "Allura CEO suspended pending investigation into fraud allegations." Below that, smaller print, board cites ethical violations, investor deception, and ongoing legal scrutiny. I set the paper down slowly. I knew it was coming, I said, but I thought I'd feel more vindicated. And do you? I thought for a moment. No, I feel done. That afternoon, my legal team finalized our communication to the fashion board and trade regulators. We released a clean record of my departure, supported by emails, contracts, and third-party statements. A final seal of truth. No mudslinging, just facts. Brant's name was nowhere on the paperwork. He didn't deserve a footnote. That evening, I sat alone in the studio after everyone had gone. Rain tapped against the windows. Same rhythm as the night I left, only now I wasn't hollow. I wasn't watching someone else's empire fall because I wanted revenge. I was watching because I no longer needed to look back. Let the world see what they'd chosen over me. I had already chosen myself. It was spring when we opened the doors to LaRue's new U.S. design studio, a converted warehouse in Brooklyn with floor-to-ceiling windows and exposed beams that had once held steel and dust. Now it held sketches, fabric rolls, and the sound of possibility. I walked the floor slowly, past workstations crowded with coffee cups and color samples, past mood boards dotted with handwritten notes and Polaroids. It was messy, vibrant, alive. Not perfect, and that's exactly how I wanted it. My name is on the building now, not in neon or etched in glass, but in the way people say, "That's Dana's team," or "That's a low concept." It's in the confidence of the interns, the way they pitch ideas without glancing over their shoulders. It's in the designers who dare to challenge me, not because they're rude, but because they believe they're allowed. I built this space from scratch, and I filled it with people who knew what it meant to be overlooked. Today, we were prepping for our first American campaign shoot, a bold mix of avant-garde textures and minimalist tailoring, designed by a 24-year-old who used to make clothes out of shower curtains in her college dorm. She stood next to me now, nervous but proud as the cameras were being set up. "You think it's too much?" she asked quietly. I smiled. "No, I think it's exactly enough." Behind us, a junior stylist buzzed around, checking hemlines, and a producer tried to track down vegan catering. I didn't need to step in. They had it. Later, I sat in on a mentorship session with a group of new hires, mostly young women, a few non-binary creatives, all hungry, all brilliant. One of them asked me, "What's the hardest lesson you've learned?" I took a moment. "That people will take everything you give them," I said, "and still call you replaceable." They nodded quietly. "But here's the thing," I continued. "When they push you out, they're not ending your story. They're just proving it was yours all along." The room fell still. Someone jotted it down in a sketchbook. As the photo shoot began, I stood just behind the lens, watching as our model, draped in a flowing slate gray coat with hand-stitched beadwork, stepped into the frame. The camera clicked, the lights flashed, and a new image of LaRue began to form. A publicist leaned over to ask if I wanted to do behind-the-scenes interviews. I nodded, then adjusted the collar on the model's look myself. This was what I wanted. Not applause, not vengeance, impact. And as the camera clicked again, I heard my own voice somewhere deep inside. They thought they'd written my final chapter, but I was only changing pens.